Bergoglio is a Jesuit. He entered the order at the age of 21. In Germany's largest Jesuit church in Munich, the new Pope's fellow Jesuits celebrated his election with their own service of thanksgiving.
Just so that there's no misunderstanding, according to church law, he ceased being a Jesuit when he was ordained a bishop. But he remains one in his heart until the day he dies. And we Jesuits in Munich, we German Jesuits, have every right to say he is one of us.
IHS. The Jesuits interpret this ancient Greek monogram with the Latin words Jesum habemus socium. We have Jesus as our companion. The order was founded in 1534 by the Basque aristocrat Ignatius of Loyola to spearhead the Catholic revival, known as the Counter-Reformation.
We are an international order. We live in communities, but not in monasteries. We don't wear a habit. We don't chant like monks. We perform tasks such as spreading the faith and working for justice. We are very involved in education. We run schools and universities all over the world. And we're also people who tend to go to the margins of the church, and sometimes beyond the margins.
In addition to their missionary work, the Jesuits dedicate themselves to teaching and research, raising questions, thinking independently, expressing their own points of view. These Jesuit virtues have produced many famous scientists, professors, and writers. Politicians and journalists often seek their opinions. They have a reputation as progressive, independent thinkers. In addition to the traditional vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, Jesuits take a fourth vow of obedience to the Pope. That means they can be entrusted with the task not just by their superiors in the order, but by the Pope himself. They're not supposed to strive for high office, but if appointed to be bishop or elected Pope, they should not refuse. With some 18,000 priests and lay brothers, the Jesuits are the largest order of priests in the Catholic Church. Responding to the plight of the needy is one of their most important tasks. Their motto, to the greater glory of God. The most important event on Pope Francis's first working day was the traditional Mass celebrated in the Sistine Chapel with his cardinals. The Master of Ceremonies was on hand to assist the new Pope. But the sermon was all his own work. He spoke of movement, growth, and discipleship. Will these be the focus of his ministry?
If you don't move, you stand still. If you don't build on rock, what happens? What happens to kids on the beach when they build sandcastles? It all collapses.
Follow the way, build the church, proclaim the faith, and all this in the sign of the cross. That was his message. Without the cross, we're not disciples of the Lord. We're bishops, priests, cardinals, popes, but not disciples of the Lord.
Io vorrei che tutti noi, dopo questi giorni di grazia.
But what does that mean today, to proclaim Christ and his cross? The new pope is already under attack. One German newspaper mocked him, a chum of the military junta, it headlined. Bergoglio has been accused of not doing enough to protect two Jesuits accused of links to Marxist guerrillas during Argentina's dirty war. The two priests were held here at the dreaded Naval Mechanics School for 5 months. Others say Bergoglio negotiated their release and the accusations are unjust. When Argentina's military staged a coup in March 1976, they promised to end the country's economic crisis and the threat of civil war. The junta also promised to govern on the basis of conservative Christian values. Initially, many senior clergy gave their support. Bergoglio, however, reserved judgment. As soon as the junta came to power, it began brutally suppressing all opposition. Raids, arbitrary arrests, and death squads became the order of the day. Thousands disappeared without trace. One year later saw the first demonstrations of the mothers and grandmothers of the Plaza del Mayo. On the square in front of the presidential palace in Buenos Aires, they confronted the ruling junta each Thursday, demanding to know the whereabouts of their husbands, sons, and daughters. "We're sick of silence," they shouted, and "we're sick of a church that is guilty of conniving with the military." Some bishops had collaborated. Others opposed the regime. This was the official residence of Enrique Angelelli, Bishop of La Rioja. He openly supported the workers. One day after Mass, his car was forced off the road. Angelelli was killed. The police concluded that it was a simple accident. The case wasn't properly investigated until the end of military rule. 2 years after the military dictatorship was toppled in 1983, the first trials began. But then the new government passed an amnesty, which remained in force for the next 20 years. Human rights groups have estimated that as many as 30,000 people disappeared during Argentina's dirty war. They were kidnapped, tortured, and murdered. Unmarked graves bear witness to this dark chapter in Argentinian history. Should the Church, should Bergoglio have protested more openly? The case of the priests is anything but clear. They had a lay assistant who fought with the guerrillas. That was why they were arrested. One of the priests died 13 years ago. The other lives in Germany. Today he says he doesn't hold anything against his former superior.
The role of Father Bergoglio, who was head of the Argentinian province, is unclear. There are allegations and refutations. Father Bergoglio certainly made great efforts to help priests and fellow Jesuits who were arrested. We don't know what really happened. Father Jalich later reconciled himself with all that he had suffered. He also met with Cardinal Bergoglio, who had become Archbishop of Buenos Aires. They discussed the whole story. Then they celebrated Mass together, and they embraced each other. He bears no grudges at all.
Dictatorships are very difficult for everyone, and especially for those in positions of authority. You have to be very wise and very cautious if you don't want to destroy more than you hope to achieve. The Church has a responsibility to fight for human dignity. It has to tell all authorities, higher than you stands the Almighty. You can't ignore him. You may not ignore him. And you have to provide law and justice for everyone. So the Church is especially vulnerable in situations like that. Dictators don't like the Church, and they especially dislike the Christians who struggle for their fellow human beings.
Die Christen, die sich für ihre Mitmenschen einsetzen.